Yeah. I get your little card. You know, and you pass. Oh, no. And I went and, got it, I got another, I got a $15.
So my goal was to finish this and have it in the council by July. So I'm hoping. I forget that.
You need a roll call.
So,
Yeah,
oh, sorry, Greg, would you call roll,
yep,
please?
you bet. Counselor Gerson,
Present.
Counselor Trask,
Present.
Mr. Lohman,
Present.
Mr. Holly,
Present.
Mr. Nash.
Here, I think.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, now I will say that. That I hope to have this done to the council by July. And I think we can do that. So, what I asked you to do was to look at this draft and sample and compare it to the old one and to see what we had left out or added in that you didn't want or whatever. So I'm going to open it up for discussion on that. On this sample two, these are the two things that I found that we left out. The description of what the mayor does and the president pro tem, and then Courtney's suggestions, and then we left this bond out on the city manager that needs to be in this under the city manager. So we are open for discussion on what we've left out of the draft or added to the draft that you don't want, or whatever.
I know when we started, charter review. Make sure you're turned on. I'm sorry. And it's gotta be, you gotta be fairly close to it.
Yeah. Yeah, scoot it right. There you go.
Okay.
There you go.
I know when we first started the Charter Review Committee several months ago, we discussed if we wanted the mayor to be elected official. And I think I brought that up because when I was running to be a council person, I went door knocking, asking questions what the community wanted. And they said they would love to see the mayor as a elected official instead of an appointed official. So, I don't see that in here, but, I'm just bringing it up because the people of Sweet Home, and I talked to over 2,000 people of Sweet Home. So that's a large body of Sweet Home. They said that they would like to see the mayor as a elected official. So they maybe would have a little bit more powers, I guess. So that's where I'm at on that part.
So
I'm sorry. Counselor Gerson, can I interrupt you real quick? We need to, as a point of order, take care of the approval of the minutes before we go in.
I'm supposed to be looking at the agenda, aren't I?
It helps sometimes.
Sorry. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Apologize. Oh, I hope you reviewed the minutes. May I have a motion to approve the minutes of the last meeting?
So moved.
Second,
Second.
all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, minutes are approved. I apologize, Ray. Okay. Courtney, did you have something you wanted to say?
Yeah, as far as an elected position for mayor, I understand where people can be coming from on that one. But if they want to say and they want to become mayor, then they need to sit on city council and figure out how deep this actually gets, because I was blown away in the 2 years that I was sitting on council. And the 2 years that I was here, there ain't a chance in heck I would ever try to run for mayor, because there is way more involved in his position than there was in the position I had. So that's why I brought up that somebody needs to be sitting on a council for 4 years so they can learn how the cities ran and what the process is and the budgeting and everything else before they can come in here and try and run the show and screw everything up like other things in this state.
Well, I agree with that from one standpoint. So if this last election we had someone that was a brand new person, never been to a council meeting that I know of, they could have been the mayor. And they have no concept of exactly what you said, that they could come in here and not know anything about the budget, how we run, how to run a meeting and those kinds of things. And so I think I used to be the same way. I thought, hey, man, we should be letting the people do that. And there is some merit to that. But I think there should just be some conditions on that. So that's where I'm at too.
Well, yeah, and if they want to be mayor that bad, then they need to step up and sit on council and prove themselves to the people before they come in and start running this town.
But I think we also, when we first started, we said that maybe we'd send out a flyer to or put it on the water bill or something to let the people, the residents of Sweet Home, since they do vote the council people in, see what they want. Basically, council is here for the people of Sweet Home, not for themselves. All elections, people that run for president, run for mayor, so a lot of them don't have any experience. There is classes. I know when the two individuals that did win for council, you did have a training session. People learn as they go on a position. So, I really believe, after talking to all the people that I talked to, I think the people of Sweet Home deserves the chance to voice their opinion, because it'd be a shame that somebody, if they heard that they didn't want that to be appointed because council says that, and then somebody comes up and wants to do a petition to get enough signatures to put it on the ballot then, and they can do that as well. And then in some way that makes the people in the council think like, oh, then we got to override. Well, I think we need to listen to the people of Sweet Home. Sure, maybe 2,000 out of 9,000 people might not sound like a lot, but that's what, 25% of Sweet Home? So, I think, maybe the people of Sweet Home needs that chance to voice their opinion. Who knows? They might all come back and say, 85% or so say, no, we don't want that. But
Well, in theory, they're voting in the mayor anyways, because they voted all 7 people up here in the council because they trust them to run the town. If they can't trust them to make a decision on who takes the precedence over the council meeting, then why are they voting for that person, period?
But the mayor position here in Sweet Home is actually just a council position. It's not a mayor position.
Okay, then you run for council again, and then in time, then you should be able to run for mayor. But I don't want somebody that hasn't been sitting up here telling me how to do things in this town when they don't know nothing about what's going on behind the walls.
I understand what you're saying, but you're one vote over, because of 2,000 people.
I'm the
I would think they have a more percentage of votes over just one person. You got to feel what they feel. That's why they come out and vote for people.
So David, I need to ask a question. Are you saying that they want a strong mayor government, which we don't have?
Well, they didn't really say that. They just said they would like to see that elected official instead of an appointed official.
But it's not an appointed official.
Well, but council, don't you guys, we don't vote for the mayor.
Well, yes, you do. You vote for whoever's sitting on the council.
You vote for a council seat. It doesn't say actually mayor, does it, on our voting thing?
No, but then the council elects the mayor, who is the spokesperson for the council, who runs the council meetings. But it isn't a strong mayor government. It's a city council manager government.
Yeah, I took it as the people wanted the mayor, not necessarily to be a strong mayor. A lot of cities don't have strong mayors. You know, they just have that the people vote for that individual as the mayor instead of council. They want to have a, I guess, say into the voting.
But I think, if I may, I believe that in cities like Albany, where you actually do elect the mayor, that's almost a full-time position. Am I correct?
Yes, it is.
Generally speaking, there are two general forms of government, a strong mayor and.
You're not on.
council manager. And usually what
Greg,
happens
hey,
oftentimes.
Ray, you're not on.
Pay attention.
Sorry. So generally in the two forms, you have the strong mayor and the council manager. Generally speaking, when you hire a mayor or you elect a mayor, it's a position somewhat paid, but they generally in turn turn around and hire an administrator at that point. There are exceptions. However, for the most part, those are your two most prominent. So even if you elect the mayor and they're a strong mayor, it oftentimes just creates an extra layer, which is why you don't see most places our council manager, especially in small towns.
But most small towns, you know, as far as I know by looking in different research, most mayors of small town are not, you know, they do have a city manager. The city manager runs the city, you know, and the people still want a city manager here. That's what, at least the people that I talk to, yeah, they like the job that you do, Ray, as a city manager. You take care of the city well. And, but they just said that they wanted to have the chance to be able to vote for a mayor as well as a council seat.
Yes, Dave.
I've been around this a long time. Sometimes I think too long. And one thing that I have found to your survey type thing is that sometimes people will tell you what you want to hear as opposed to what they really think. And to point out the obvious, Dave, and I'm not trying to be facetious or mean, if all of these people had agreed with you, you would have been elected. And that didn't happen.
Well, I got 1,200 some votes, so,
Yeah.
you know, out of the 2,000 that I talked
Yeah.
to.
But we've been with this procedure that we have for as long as I can remember. I don't think there's some suggestions on here that I don't agree with. I don't think the mayor should be limited to 2 terms. I don't really think that you need to be on council for 4 years in order to become mayor. I do think you do need to serve on council to gain some experience before you become mayor. It's never been an established procedure, but to come in and say, you know, I haven't served on a budget committee, I haven't served on a parks board, I haven't served on a planning commission, but I want to be mayor of the city. I think I made a comparison when we talked about this before, that it's like the guy coming in and say, I haven't played basketball before, but I'm pretty damn smart, so I'm going to be the point guard. Or on the football team, I'm going to be the quarterback. You learn and you move into these positions with experience. I would love to see 15 people run for the 4 council seats every time that they come up. But experience shows that doesn't happen. You're doggone lucky. The last election that we had, I think, is the most that we have had running in any election probably in the last 15 years. I love to see that. I love to see new involvement, and I love to see people with new ideas. But with those ideas, you have to have some kind of an idea of what's going on within the city before you can just step into the position. And I think the way we do it now, elected through the council, is the right way to do it.
But most people reason why they don't, and talking, you know, some of the people really talked my ear off.
I'm
the-
sure.
The reason they wouldn't want to run is because of the pay. I ran because I didn't run because of the pay. What could I do with the $70 a month? You know,
It's pretty staggering.
that doesn't even fill my tank for the whole month of gas. I did it because I like giving back and contributing to the city I live in. That's the reason why I did it. I didn't do it for the pay. And also, even if we did elect a mayor, the mayor only has one vote, so council could still outvote him or her, as a
But
vote. So it's not like the mayor had any more power at that point.
yeah, you wouldn't change the power structure at all, but you would change what happens in meetings. You would change how things function if you came in and had to learn from the ground up from your first meeting forward. I just don't think that that's something that we want to do.
I just, you know, I felt that some of the people that were talking about wanting to elect a mayor was basically talking bad about the mayor, you know, saying he's just a council person. He ain't a mayor, you know, he's just a council person. So I felt bad for the mayor basically for what they were, but you know, I'm running for an office, so, you know, I'm just listening and, you know, I'm not agreeing with the people, but I'm listening and say, you know, I'll bring, when I go to council meetings or to any functions of the city, I'll bring up some of your guys' concerns, you know, as showing that I care about what the people of Sweet Home is talking about.
Well, if they think he's just a council member, they need to get their name on the ballot and come in here and show their worth.
Yeah, I agree with that. Because like I told you, I was on that same boat for a while, but then I got thinking, oh, well, I haven't seen anyone here that ran for council except for one. And just like Courtney said, when I got on my first term, I was blown away. I did not know the stuff that you have to go through to know what the heck's going on. And you don't learn that in a week. You don't learn that in a week, you know, and to have
It took me a year.
yeah, and have
Trying to figure it out.
somebody come in that's never been to a council meeting ever, and that's what could have happened this term. It could have happened this time, and we'd have a mayor that has never been to a meeting, has never been on a committee, has never ran a meeting, and doesn't know how it goes. It would be a kind of a disaster. And I agree with Dave. If you had 2,000 people on your side, you would have been voted in. You would have been voted in. I've been here all of my life, and I've never had one person. Now not one person tell me that they wanted to vote on a mayor. Never, ever.
Mhm.
During one of my terms as mayor, I had a council person tell me away from a meeting, really what you say doesn't matter anyway. You're nothing but a figurehead. And about 2 meetings after that, when we had a complete room full of people wanting to lynch the police chief and I had to control things, he told me after the meeting that he apologized, that it kind of woke him up as to he was in his first term on the council. It's not an easy job. It's a smooth job about 90% of the time, but the 10% that you're really needed is when you pay for that experience and when that experience comes in handy.
Well, and I got one more comment. You know, like I said before in another meeting, if you're bringing this from Florida, this is not Florida.
Well, it's not, I'm not talking about Florida and I'm talking for the people,
Excuse me.
you know, because I take that as
Excuse
defensive
me.
then.
Excuse
I
me.
take that
I
as
was
defensive.
speaking.
Okay, go ahead.
I was speaking, okay? That's what I've heard, and I'm kind of tired of it. If that's what that's what I'm assuming that you're saying, that, you know, this is the way it was when I was in Florida, and I don't want to hear that anymore. And if 2,000 people want us to change, then we'll change, or 5,000 or whatever it is. There was more people that voted on this last election than I've ever seen, ever. So they vote us in to run the city, and we need a mayor who knows what's going on. That's all there is. Okay? I'm sorry that I interrupted you, but you interrupted me first. So that's what I'm after. I will never vote for this, ever.
Well, I only use Florida as an example, but I take that defensive if you want to be rude and want to throw that up. Other cities in Oregon then, okay, we'll say Oregon, a lot of cities do the same thing. They believe in that. And, I'm talking to the people, for how you came across about, to me, in Florida, I'm also a voter in Sweet Home, so I take that defensive as you being a council person and throwing stones at me for making a comment.
Okay, Dave.
That's all I'm doing is bringing up comments, but you don't need to get aggressive and rude. Excuse me for saying that, but that's how I feel.
All right, let's take a look at this as a committee. Whether or not we're in the. As a proposal. But I'm going to call.
No.
This,
No.
Yes.
Courtney?
No.
I vote no also, so we won't include that in the. Now, if we look at sample 2, Mr. Holly brought up the idea under this leadership, the description of mayor's responsibilities, brought up the issue about limiting it to 2 consecutive terms. I'd like to have a discussion with you about that, rest of you.
I think as long as they're doing the job correctly, then I don't have a problem with them serving more than 2 terms.
Okay. Okay.
I agree with that. It's unusual. We've only had a couple. I think Craig Fenneman's the last that comes to mind that served for more than 2 terms. I think we've gotten away from, in the old days, it was kind of I had my turn, now it's your turn type thing. And that feeling doesn't exist anymore. But like Courtney says, if a person is he's going to have to stand re-election with the people every 4 years anyway. The ballot box will show you what they think of the job that he's been doing. And if council is satisfied and things are going well, then I don't have a problem with him being more than 2 terms at all.
Okay. Okay.
I believe in the 2-term thing only because growing up in a family, my grandparents and stuff always stressed that politics wasn't meant to be a career. It's nice to let somebody be concerned about their city, country, state, county, and go in there and do and see what you can do. And then after a couple of terms, pass the gallop to somebody else and let them take over after you. So yeah, I believe in seeing new blood up on council.
Okay. Dave?
I don't have an issue with them. I don't know that the 4-year thing is the right way. We've had this 2-year thing forever. I don't know that I want to put a number on that. They can't run for 3 or 4. I really don't care, because it is a change and it's pretty important. And he doesn't run the city, but he's pretty high on that list. So whether it's two years a term or 4 years, I don't care. That's not something that really bothers me in one way or the other.
Okay. Well, it sounds like the consensus is that we don't need a term limit on there. So let's take that out. Is everything else under that list, comes right off of our out of our current charter.
Well, I might maybe comment on what he had a suggestion according to what I see here, that to be mayor, that you should have served as city councilor for at least 4 years prior to being elected. I don't think a 4-year requirement is necessary. it would be, you would have 2 years. Irregardless, I think you would be here. If you say that he has to have 4 years experience, then you're saying that he has to be reelected as a counselor before he would become eligible for a mayor's position. I kind of put this one in the if it ain't broke, don't fix it position. We've not had a problem, to my knowledge, with anything like this. And like I say, you would be here for 2 years anyway before you would be elected mayor. It'd be extremely unusual to have a first-time elected counselor be elected to the mayor's position by the rest of the council, I think.
Could be done, though.
Yeah, well, yeah, it could.
It's possible. It could happen. You know, it could happen.
But I don't know. So you want to use the word elected, or should that be a different word, Diane? I mean, we kind of elect them.
We do elect them.
Yeah, but I mean, is that something, is
You
that the
want
proper word?
elected?
No, I don't know what to put in there. I'm just saying is elected the right way because the council's choosing someone. If that's the right word, I don't care. It doesn't make me
We
any
can
difference.
put
I
select.
think it's the right word because you choose by vote.
Yeah.
And when you vote, you
Yeah.
elect.
Which is elected.
The only thing
Yeah.
about that elected word, I take it as if I was an individual of Sweet Home, I'd say I don't elect the mayor. Council, so maybe it should have maybe council in there. Council elects the mayor because a regular
Or
person
we
doesn't
could
know
just-
that.
Excuse me, I'm sorry. We could just say shall have served as city councilor for at least 2 years.
Well, even at that, I mean, like Dave said, I mean, a person's going to be here. It's not like their first meeting. They're going to get probably, I mean, 0.0001% chance they're going to become mayor. So that wouldn't even need to really go in there into anything anyways. When I brought that up, I just wanted to make sure that I think that people need to sit here in this seat before they get to sit in that center seat.
And I think Dave's right in this sense that if the mayor is picked, then it's going to be 2 years unless they resign or have to move or whatever. It'll be 2 years before we re-elect someone or put somebody else in there.
Mhm.
So that'd give them 2 years. And I think that that's probably minimal. So
Yeah.
you can do a lot of stuff in 2 years. No doubt about that.
A lot of these things, I think we have to take Mr. Snyder's advice on, is that if you make a change like this in the charter and you see that it's not such a good idea, you have to go through the whole process again and go to the ballot again. And so when you make changes in the charter, these changes are going to be voted on in an election citywide. If you make a change just for the sake of making it, and a couple of years later say, well, I think we probably made a mistake, then you got to go through this process all over again to undo that. So if there's a problem with something, then change the charter. If there isn't a problem with something, then try and deal with things with council rules or something like that, rather than making changes in the charter.
You're correct in the interpretation of, if you, as we said before, if you stick it in the charter, it's basically in stone until the people change it. If you can, if it turns out to be something you just can't live with, you still have to go back to the people to change it.
Yeah, we know how this process works. It's not easy and it's not fun, so to a certain degree. And there are things that could be changed. There's no doubt about that. Language and those kinds of things. But to make a huge change might be a little overboard.
When, like Greg is mayor now, when he's up for election in 2 years or a year and a half or whatever it is he still mayor while he's running for election, or does the council appoint somebody to be mayor until the end of the
No.
election?
No, he's mayor until the election is
So if
complete.
he doesn't get voted in, then after the election, then council would elect, since you guys are using that word,
Well,
elect.
until January.
Yeah, so the mayoral term mirrors the election cycles. So the mayoral term is 2 years. And so a counselor is going to come in and out at the same time as the mayoral 2-year. So whether you're 4-year or the 2-year term, it will fall that first meeting in January with the new counselors, you would elect the mayor. So it would all coincide. I guess is
So-
what I'm saying.
So basically, the people in Sweet Home would know that if Greg lost, person that won over Greg, they're not coming in as mayor. They're coming in as a council person, correct?
Right, because
And
the
then
ballot
let
is all
council-
for council. It says city council.
Okay, and then council would vote for that one person to be mayor, whoever they
Correct.
would vote for.
Okay, so let's get back then. So do we want to put anything in there about prior experience? Courtney?
Well, like Dave said, I don't, after listening to him, it's probably not gonna be a necessity.
Dave?
It would be so rare
Okay,
that you would be dealing, because the way we elect counselors, you elect 4 out of your 7, you're still gonna have 3 on the council with experience. Even if you get a full new slate, if you have 4 new people elected, you're still gonna have people with experience on the council. I don't know, I would hate to see it limited.
okay. David?
I'd rather not see it limited either.
I would think that the council would make the proper call when the time came.
Okay,
So-
scrap that. Then the same thing holds true for the president pro tem, then you don't want it limited to 2 consecutive terms, right?
No.
Okay. So then the only thing on sample 2 that we keep, or that we keep, is what we already have in the city charter. There's nothing new then that will go in under the leadership. And then the city manager bond was not added in, and it needs to be in there, I believe, right? Is that correct?
So I'm not sure, honestly. I was trying to Google. In my experience, I believe it's required in Washington, but I'm also aware of cities back east where it was a requirement. The gentleman was fired. And there was some contention around it. And the bond company came after the fired individual. And so that city was then unable to recruit a replacement. They had a very difficult time after that. So if it's in the law, it's in the law. You hope that things wouldn't be contentious. I think people who sit in this seat understand, or should understand, that we have windows and that there are expectations of us that when that window closes, we should all bow out gracefully and professionally. So I would hope that's not an issue in the future. So I don't know if I'm giving you an answer you want to hear or not. Maybe I'm babbling a little too much. So I think I'd like to find out, maybe Robert knows if it's in an ORS that it's required or not in Oregon. And then I think that's just something you might want to consider.
Robert, could you find that out for us?
That would be fine. I was just looking real fast in the model one, see if I saw a bond. It doesn't pop out here. It doesn't pop out, and that's basically where I go. I'll look at that real closely. There it doesn't pop out to me that in the model one that there's a bond. I'll find out.
Okay, thank
But we
you.
have time, so that
Yeah.
shouldn't be too much of a problem.
No problem. Okay. Okay, so those were 2 items that I saw that we had left out on this draft. Did you get to compare the 2? Is there anything I found a couple of different things that we had added into the new one, if we're gonna do the new one. One is the annexation section 1.3 that we didn't have in the current charter. And I think also this section 2.3, distribution was not in the other charter. And then we've talked about these vacancies, chapter 5 before. And also we talked about about the manager living within 30 miles of the city, which is section chapter 7.
Yeah, I don't know if we talked about it to the extent of a vote or not, but on my copy, I have that scribbled out. Because
Well, I have quotes around it, so there must be a question in our mind about it.
I thought we talked about it a couple months ago.
I thought we did too.
To
and
take it out?
Decided that wasn't really,
Yeah, my notes were say remove and then it has contract with a question mark. So
Okay,
maybe it's something you
we're
would try to
gonna-
negotiate in the
we're gonna take it
contract.
Out of the charter and put it someplace else.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay, I will be sure that I did that right then. Is that the same? I think that's the same on vacancies. Okay, so the last thing we have to talk about are ordinances, which is probably the biggie as far as some of the council members are concerned. If you want to look at the current charter, chapter 7, I think one of the big issues is whether or not we need to read these things 3 times. Is that right, Dave?
Yes, I think there's some people that don't want to have it the first time, but I really don't know how many of the council actually reads one of those. It's 50 pages long.
I read every one of them.
Yeah, I know you did. I know you did.
I do too.
It was a
but-
learning session, wasn't it? Yeah, there's some of them are so long and so drawn out. And the way I understand it, it's not every city does this. I think we're one of the rare ones that still do it. And if we could have somebody that comes and talks to us about what it really means, maybe that could be happening. I don't know. That'll obviously be up to the council, because I think you can take a nap when they're reading that stuff out. And
There are, the question though, was, just so everybody's on the same page, there really is 2 parts to that, just so that you talk about both parts. There's the reading it in full for the first time. That bothers some people. And then there's the other question of, do you want to read it? Do you want it to read it 3 times before it becomes, you just want to do it twice before it kicks in? That's the extra question.
Right. You're right. Thank you, Robert.
Weren't they reading it in full? And then the second 2 is just by title only?
Correct.
Can we is there a Cliff Note version of this? I like Cliff Notes.
First question is do you want to look into of not having to read it in its fullness the first time? And then the second part of the thing is, do you want to still keep the 3 readings, whether you read them in full or just by title? Do you want it to do 3 times? The plus of reading it in full is it takes up time and effort, but you do find things, I'll just tell you, you do find things that you never find any other way. even though you may have read it 4 times to yourself or have two other people go over it and check it all over, you're still find some things that you just, it resonates different. It sounds different when it's read, and sometimes you pick up things that you wouldn't pick up any other way. So that's the one side of it. And then the other, the one side for the 3 readings, at least from is that we've always interpreted that to mean that we aren't stuck with the previous one. It can change up to the last one. So if you do have some input for the second time, you can stick it in there and the council can talk about it. And then if you even have some input that you find out or whatever from whatever source for the third time, it can change until it becomes law on the third reading. And so it allows you to discuss and consider, those options. And sometimes things don't come up until the third reading. You get your packets beforehand, of course, so you know what's coming and all that. But as a person doing them, it gives you 2 or 3 shots at it before it becomes law. And if you cut that down, I'm not saying that you can't. I'm just saying if you cut it down, you just basically cut out one of those chances to catch something that you want, or put something better in, or put something, hopefully it's all improving for the better. And then to also keep in mind is that if you really actually, let's say you wanted it, you had an ordinance and you wanted it in place immediately, everybody's agreeable, everybody's saying we need this, whatever it is, you can have an ordinance in place in 2 weeks. You can read it for the first time, everybody agrees on it. You can title it and read it for the second time at the meeting, and then you can have another meeting. Heck, you could have a special meeting for it the next day if you noticed it ahead of time, and have the third reading. I don't think it has to be at a regular meeting. Have the third reading and be done with it. But even if you just kept it, I'll just keep the example. Even if you just kept it at the regular meetings, because I don't want to get in trouble with the special meeting, you can have the first meeting could have the first reading plus the second one, and then the third reading could be 2 weeks from then at the regular meeting, and you could have an emergency clause on it, and it could go into effect right then, and within 14 days you could have your law on the book. Right now, as it stands, it doesn't often happen that way, but it could if you needed it.
If I could just, as a note to clarify, it says just 2 different days. So I think you would be okay with the special meeting. If you wanted to really go that fast. It just says 2 days.
Mostly on appropriation, stuff like that. Basically, with the state wanting something done and we needed to move on it or whatever, sometimes it comes through like that, where you do 2 readings at once and then have the other reading to make some deadline that you need.
Well, and it does say that the second one can just be, does it say unanimous vote and then it?
Yeah.
Yeah, and so the second one can just be title only.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You want to read it?
I think the key word in all of this, though, and Robert mentioned it a couple of times, is law. Ordinances are laws. And I think you want to be very careful before you start putting a rush process on ordinances. We're only talking, how many do we have in a year's time? Normally 5 to 6, maybe. You're not talking about, I used to get bored with that, listening to all of it. But as Robert points out, sometimes it's during this process that the person that wrote the thing finally realizes that's not what I meant to say, and this isn't right. Our process that we have now, you can read by title only immediately after that reading if you want to rush the process. And your next regular meeting, which would be 2 weeks from then, enact it. And if you want to declare an emergency, put the emergency clause on it, and it doesn't have the 30 days at the end of it, it becomes law immediately or in effect immediately. I don't think you want to put it much tighter than that, because you're talking about enacting laws. That's what an ordinance is. And if you try and streamline that process anymore, you're going to open up the opportunity to have somebody make a mistake or somebody not catch something. I think what we have now works fine. And I am the first to say that I did not like to sit through the reading of a 10-page ordinance, you know.
I'd like to invite you to the reading of the new development code
Yeah.
in a couple weeks.
Yeah. But it's,
Brand-
sometimes you think it's cumbersome, but
But Brandon has come up with the reading by somebody from England or whatever. He can put anybody on there he wants,
yeah.
and they read it up. So that helps.
I think they need to get rid of by title only and have Ray read it every time for 3 times, due to the fact that I'm not
I
here.
thought we were
anymore.
friends, Courtney.
Due to the fact that I don't have to hear it anymore, I'm okay with that.
Well, I'm going to come to your house and read it right outside your window now.
Go ahead, Reaper's out front.
I'll bring dog treats.
Again, I just reemphasize, I'd be really careful in trying to streamline a process any faster that involves the enacting of laws.
Well, Dave, I don't think, my time here, I think we only had maybe one time we did something not an emergency thing, but we needed to get it done right away. I think I remember one of those. So I don't think we go to the next meeting and have the second reading, and then I think typically we go to the third one.
Sometimes it normally deals with appropriations that on requirements from the state or something like that, when you run into those things and you're not looking at something that's going to affect the people in the city from then on. You're talking about something that's a one-time thing.
Well, Diane, I do look through them. I look through this sections of them, but I tell you, I'm like Dave, I would totally get bored out of my mind to try to read a 75 or 100 page document. So I'd be willing to bet there's a lot of people that do not read it or even maybe go through it, but that's beside the point. So.
Well, and actually now with the computer, it's not distinctly read.
Yeah, yeah,
So,
yeah.
I think we set it to, I think 1.5 or 1.8. So it's a little quicker now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that really makes it makes it a lot better.
But if we look at time-wise, we're still looking at what, 60 days,
Yeah.
60 to 90 days before anything can be put into effect?
Actually, no. You're
Well,
not.
no, just like Dave and I were saying, if it can be put into effect in 2 weeks, if you have everybody in agreement. If you don't, it could be in effect within 1 month. And if you, even with that, even if you have an emergency clause on, it only takes 60 days.
Well, Robert, were we, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think somewhere down the line, I don't think this year, maybe last year, it came up about the emergency clause.
Uh-huh.
Didn't it? And we were kind of reprimanded for using it.
Well, we don't use different folks put them in for different reasons, but we try to not use the emergency clause unless it's an emergency, and then it's good form to put in your whereases usually before the ordinance, your reason why you want the emergency, and spell it out. That's how that's how you try to do it. But most of them don't have an emergency clause on them unless somebody articulates a reason for it. But to answer your question, like, you could have a first reading at the first of the month, and then the second reading is at the 15th, and the third reading is at the 30th. An emergency clause for another 30 days. So your law is going into effect within 60 days, just normally.
And if I
That's,
recall,
everything is done routinely.
Right.
Yeah.
yeah, if I
Could be
recall,
cut.
the reason we did the one that I do remember is we had a really close timeline and it had to be in by a certain
Yeah.
time, and that's why that happened.
Yeah,
And
you're usually trying to meet a timeline of the state is what
Yes,
you're usually
yeah,
trying to do.
and anything that we do has to be unanimous. So it says down here on the second
Well,
reading.
to get the second reading at the first meeting, it does.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it doesn't.
Yeah.
It just goes through normal. You could have split votes all 3 times.
Is there any more discussion on ordinances?
Unless there is a proposed change, I don't think we need to do anything.
Yeah.
Well, my take on it is that we are forgetting technology in this, and the fact that all of these ordinances and these proposals are online for anybody who wants to access them prior to the meeting. Isn't that right, Ray? With the packet, which is not something that's been in, before, when this was originally written. So part of this is for the public to know and understand what the ordinance says, but we have that availability now. So I don't know. I personally don't like sitting through that being read. I don't even like it when the computer does it.
Yeah.
So, I
I
mean,
don't either. I don't.
anyway, so are there any proposed changes? Anyone? Courtney? Dave? David?
No.
Okay. Dates as it is. Then the last chapter is public improvements. I don't know that, did you have anything in this, Ray, particularly? I don't think there's anything in here that, and everything else is by law, I believe. Indebtedness and all the other types of things. So I guess the next step is to decide if we're even going to change the charter. If we think that what we've looked at for the last several months is something we want to do something about or not. Our recommendation would be to the council.
Well, the only 2 things I think that we've discussed that I would be interested in doing if we could figure out a way to do it is to add a preamble, which we don't have now, I don't think.
I have it on the draft, right? If we don't have.
And to limit the 2 or 3 pages that discuss city manager duties and kind of shorten that up. It's kind of like the charter has a full job description of the city manager when he works at the pleasure of the council. He's got maybe a half a dozen primary responsibilities, and then there's a whole litany of other things, as we know from it being in the charter. That's too long. I don't know how we go about shortening it up and how you make it fit to a ballot to shorten it up, to explain what you're trying to do, or if we just live with what we have.
Well, in the sample, it's considerably shorter. And part of it's just because of the way it's been structured. It says the same thing, but it's been structured
Yeah.
differently.
And when you stop and think about it, maybe it's to the benefit of particularly newer councilmen or councilors to have that long, convoluted explanation of what the city manager does. Maybe it is something that helps them to better understand that. I don't know.
So if it does get shortened up, is it gonna really make a huge difference
No,
on,
it's
I mean, what
really
he does
gonna
anyways?
Improve things, you know.
Well, they're, like you've said before, if it's not broke, why fix it?
Yeah.
I mean, if nothing's really gonna get changed, then we don't have to mess with the ballot.
Well, the thing for us to consider is the cost of doing this with the intent of having people go along with that. And if they don't, then we're back where we started anyway. But just for the two parts that we have there, I agree, this thing of the city manager thing, and my goodness, that's,
The last changes that we made, if I remember correctly, had primarily to deal with cleaning up the language that said he and him all the time instead of, you know, making it more of a unisex type document to where it recognized that women are playing an important part in things. And we had some other language in there that absolutely didn't apply anymore. We had a hard time at that time coming up with how to explain it on a ballot title
yeah.
or on a ballot. These reviews, I think, are good. They're necessary to review it, but unless you're going to make a real change, rather than just change a word here and there or redefine duties or something like that, you're better off to just leave it as it is and schedule another review in a couple of years.
How much does it cost to actually get something on the ballot and get everything out so people have their say on if they like it or not?
There's a lot of variables in there. For instance, so the costs, in my experiences, the costs of the election are split amongst all of the ballot issue proposers. So if you're the only one on the ballot, it's far more expensive than if there are others on the ballot. So you try to time them, you know, during a national election or the mid-year election. I think when I've been part of something like this before, it was I want to say it cost us about $12,000, but that was not in Oregon. I don't know if Robert has a better recollection. Yeah, and that was
You try to hit the general election so you get it spread over all the measures rather than just yourself, like in May or something. You wouldn't put it on in May or whatever. You try the biggest election you can find so that you get your cost spread.
Still, even with that, I mean, because I missed considerable meetings. I've only get a couple, but from what I'm hearing, there's not a lot or very minimal changes to it. So is it really worth the cost when we can use that money somewhere else in the city for something that's needed?
Well, for me, just to get that ordinance thing done would be great.
No. Okay, 3 full readings.
Well, I think that's part of the reason the council has asked you to do this is to make that recommendation of, I would imagine that perhaps Councilor Gerson and I and Julie will sit down and kind of prepare a final report to give to the council that you all would present to them. And that would be, here are the things we considered, here's why. Here's what we came up with our consensus, and then change this, propose the change or don't propose the change. And then I think that's probably part of why you're here, is to say, yeah, we think this is important enough to do or not. So I think that's up to you.
Well, if they're trying to make it easier on that, I'm going to vote no because I'm not here anymore. But like Robert said, you know, I mean, when you're reading through that stuff, I mean, because I mean, I'll be honest, I didn't have the time to sit and read through 100, 150, 180 pages of stuff. So didn't listen to every bit of the reading, but I would try to follow along for what I could. And if something didn't sound right, then it might click in my head and make me listen a little bit more. You know, so I mean, I understand why you do the full reading, but after sitting here, I understand why you don't want it to happen too.
All of us have been there and done that, I think.
So what is the consensus? Leave it as it is or propose, as Ray said, take it to the council with the changes that we talked about, but we are not necessarily wedded to,
I
and
think that
leave it
would
to
be,
the council?
I think that would be a good idea. It may go somewhere and it may not, but you know, that's why we have the people making that decision. So, you know, and we've talked about a lot of stuff. You know, some that was not as important to some as others and all that stuff, but yeah, it doesn't appear to me that it may not be worth the money depending on how much it costs to do the, like you say, Courtney, the minimal things that we're looking at. So if Ray and Diane and Julie can bring that up to us and then let them know, let the whole council know that this is what we talked about and see if they're interested in any of that stuff, then I think that's a good idea.
Well, I'm not sure that I agree with you on that. I think if you go ahead and go to council with the two counselors that are part of this committee with the changes that we talked about but didn't recommend, recommendations need to come from this committee,
Yeah.
not from the two counselors that are on it.
Yeah.
If not, then you don't need the committee. If the committee comes to a consensus, then that consensus is what needs to be reported to the council.
Correct.
If the council needs to or wants to initiate something on their own, then they can do that. But I would not be comfortable with going back to council with all the things that we discussed and saying, what do you think? What
So-
you need to do as chairman or chairperson, I think, is to report to council that it was a consensus of the committee to do this or not to do this.
That's
And
what
then
I'm
if the
asking
council
for
wants
now.
to initiate, or you want to initiate as a council person, then you can do that.
That's what I'm asking for, a consensus.
Okay.
Do we change it or we don't change it?
My consensus is that we make no changes.
No changes.
You could be wrong, Dave.
I know, I've been wrong before. I'm just telling you what I think.
Chances are he's not.
Yeah, it would be probably not very, it wouldn't be worth it to me. I mean, if the council had some consideration they wanted to take up, then that would be a different story, but yeah, would it be nice to have a preamble? Absolutely. But is it worth the money to do just to get a preamble in there? Probably not. So I think yeah, I agree with it.
Okay, so the consensus of the committee is that we do not change, we recommend to the council that the charter not be changed.
Yeah, I think that's what it said.
Is that correct?
It is certainly appropriate for you to discuss with the council the things as a council
Right.
person that we,
That we
did discuss.
that we looked at, right?
Nothing wrong with that at all. And if as a council you want to initiate it on your own, then fine. But at least the committee part of it has done its job.
Right. Okay,
Diane, I'd like to apologize to the whole committee for my
snarkiness.
conduct.
Okay, well, then we won't need to meet again unless you want to.
Are we gonna have a party?
I don't think so. Okay, gentlemen, thank you for all your help.
Yeah, it was worth it.
And this meeting is adjourned. Yes, we
Yeah,
looked at this.
these are necessary things.